On February 4, 2010, Joseph McStay's cell phone made a final call to his business partner, Charles Chase Merritt. The call went unanswered. Days later, the McStay family, Joseph, his wife Summer, and their two young sons, Johnny and Joseph Jr., vanished from their home in Fallbrook, California. Their car appeared abandoned near the Mexican border. Their house stood eerily still, with popcorn bowls left on the couch and eggs rotting on the counter. It looked like the family had simply walked away from their lives. But 3 years later, when 4 shallow graves were discovered in the Mojave Desert, the truth surfaced, one that shocked even the closest of friends. The killer had been right beside them all along. Joseph and Summer McStay seemed like the picture-perfect couple. Joseph ran a successful decorative fountain business, and Summer was a devoted mother raising their 2 boys. They had recently moved into a new home in Fallbrook, eager to settle into a fresh chapter of family life. The McStays were not wealthy in the sense of extreme luxury, but they were comfortable. Joseph's business was thriving, and his longtime associate, Chase Merritt, was often by his side. Merritt was skilled at fabricating metal parts, and Joseph relied on him to keep his contracts flowing. But behind Merritt's easy smile and charming demeanor lurked a darker side. He had a long criminal history, burglary, theft, and fraud, and a crippling gambling addiction. Those who knew him said he was always in debt, constantly looking for the next way to scrape together cash. Still, Joseph trusted him, perhaps too much. When the McStays stopped answering phone calls in early February 2010, their relatives grew worried. On February 13th, Joseph's brother Michael climbed through a back window into their home. He found no trace of the family, just the 2 dogs, hungry but alive, pacing in the backyard. By February 15th, police were involved. At first, nothing pointed to foul play. No signs of forced entry, no blood, no struggle, just everyday life left frozen in time. Investigators soon discovered that the family's SUV had been found abandoned at a strip mall near the Mexican border. Surveillance footage showed a family of 4, similar in appearance to the McStays, crossing into Mexico on foot. Could the McStays have left voluntarily? That theory consumed detectives for years. Their computer search history revealed queries like, "What documents do children need for traveling to Mexico?" and Spanish language lessons. For a while, authorities leaned into the idea that Joseph and Summer had fled south, possibly seeking a fresh start. But their relatives never believed it. Summer's passport had expired. Joseph's business was thriving. Their bank accounts, with over $100,000, sat untouched. And the McStays had never expressed interest in Mexico, especially during a period of violent cartel wars. Something didn't add up. By 2013, the missing persons case had gone cold. Then came a chilling discovery. On November 11, 2013, a motorcyclist riding through the Mojave Desert near Victorville stumbled upon human remains in 2 shallow graves. Forensic testing confirmed the worst. The bodies belonged to Joseph, Summer, Johnny, and little Joseph Jr. Each of them had been bludgeoned to death with a blunt object. In one of the graves, investigators recovered a rusted 3-pound sledgehammer, the likely murder weapon. The brutality of the killings horrified investigators. The family hadn't fled to Mexico. They hadn't left voluntarily. They had been murdered in cold blood, buried like secrets in the desert sand. Attention quickly turned back to Chase Merritt. He had been the last person Joseph spoke to, and financial records showed something damning. In the days immediately after the McStays vanished, Merritt wrote checks totaling over $21,000 from Joseph's business account, checks he had forged. He spent the money at casinos, losing thousands in a matter of hours. This was no coincidence. Police now believed Merritt had lured Joseph into a meeting under the guise of business. In reality, Merritt knew his financial crimes were about to be discovered. Desperate and drowning in gambling debts, he decided to silence Joseph permanently. But Merritt didn't stop with Joseph. Prosecutors argued that he killed Summer and the children to eliminate witnesses, beating all 4 family members to death before burying them in the desert. The evidence was strong, but Merritt denied everything. He even claimed he had passed a polygraph test, insisting he had nothing to do with the murders. In interviews, He went so far as to suggest that Summer herself might have been responsible, citing supposed anger issues. Still, the evidence mounted. His DNA was found inside the McStay's abandoned car. The forged checks tied him directly to Joseph's finances. His gambling addiction painted a clear motive: money. But the case was far from simple. The trial dragged on for years, delayed repeatedly as Merritt fired his attorneys, tried to represent himself, and challenged the evidence at every turn. By the time opening statements began in January 2019, nearly a decade had passed since the murders. In court, prosecutors painted Merritt as a manipulative conman who betrayed Joseph's trust for financial gain. They argued he used the sledgehammer to brutally kill the family, then buried their bodies in a remote desert, thinking they would never be found. The defense countered with doubt, suggesting the evidence was circumstantial and that others might have had motives. But the jury saw through it. On June 10, 2019, a jury found Chase Merritt guilty of 4 counts of first-degree murder. 2 weeks later, they recommended the death penalty. On January 21, 2020, the court upheld that decision. Merritt was sentenced to death for the murder of the McStay family. Today, he remains incarcerated at the Richard J. Donovan Correctional Facility in San Diego, with no chance of parole. While California currently has a moratorium on executions, his death sentence still stands as a chilling reminder of his crimes. For the McStay's loved ones, the verdict brought some measure of justice, but little comfort. The loss of Joseph, Summer, and their 2 children remains a wound that will never fully heal. The case stands as one of the most haunting modern true crime stories, a reminder that sometimes the people closest to us can hide the darkest of secrets.